Hey folks, welcome back for another episode of Code Club. In today's episode, I am going to be taking a stab at recreating part of this figure that was published in the journal Nature Microbiology earlier in the month, or maybe back in October. Earlier on Monday, or Tuesday, I guess yesterday, I posted a critique video discussing this figure and the context of it, where it was published, the story it's trying to tell, what I thought worked, what I thought didn't work. Something I thought didn't work was a lot of things, but panel A in particular is, I think, where I'm going to start in my refactoring, that the x-axis represents the different samples, and the y-axis are different hydrogenase and other genes that either consume or produce hydrogen within the gut microbiome. If none of that makes sense to you, don't worry. Just think of these as categorical variables on the y-axis, and the x is another categorical variable. And then each tile in these heat maps represents the abundance, which you can then see in the legend over on the right. One other problem that I noticed with this is that because the three panels at the top were the same width, it gives the sense that they have the same number of samples, right? And the reality is that there were 300 fecal metagenomes and there were 78 fecal metatranscriptomes. And you can kind of see that, I guess, if you look a little bit closer, where this tile here is a lot wider than, I don't know, say this green tile here, right? And so it's probably about, I don't know, 3 times, 4 times wider, right? And then the biopsy metagenomes over on the right were also showing in counts per genome. So that's what CPG is, which is the same unit as the fecal metagenomes. And over here, I believe there were 102 total. So that would be, like 34 per rectangle. So the challenge that I saw was that color is nearly impossible to interpret in a quantitative manner. And so I wouldn't want to put an important variable to my story like abundance on color. I would much rather put abundance on one of the axes, because it makes it far easier to make relative comparisons if everything has the same benchmark, the same starting point or ending point. And so what I'd like to do is take panel 1A and maybe just the first 2 parts and convert these into a jitter plot, where on the x-axis, again, we will put the abundance, the y-axis, these different gene categories. And so we'll have the metagenomes and the metatranscriptomes. And what I thought I would do would be to go ahead and make a third panel and not worry about the biopsies for now, and to instead put in the ratio. So what is the ratio of transcripts to metagenomes, okay? And so again, this comes from a paper published in Nature Microbiology, a widespread hydrogenase supports fermentative growth of gut bacteria in healthy people. Another thing that I'm thinking about, if I come down to the results section, click that, is where does figure 1A show up, right? So if I do search for figure 1A, I'm kind of thinking about, well, where does it use, kind of put me into a weird place, but where does it use the figure to support the text, and how does it do that, right? And so we can see a couple things, right? I don't know what it's saying here, or what's it saying? A small but active proportion of the community is predicted to mediate hydrogen uptake by the human gut, right? And so they then talk about the ratios, they talk about the abundances, right? And so it might be good to kind of go back and forth between the text and the figure. And so if we come back to maybe just look at figure 1, we can see where it's mentioned earlier in the paper. Yeah, back up here. This is what I was looking for. Okay. I don't know why, I don't know, whatever. But so like, for example, hydrogenase genes are extremely abundant, occurring on average at 1.44 plus or minus 0.58 copies per genome. So if I come over here, do I see that? Not really, right? And so my initial thought would be that all of these are hydrogenases. When I did some more digging, what they're referring to are these first 3 rows as hydrogenases. And so, again, because there's so many samples, the slices of these tiles in this heat map are so thin. I would say, well, like this black is 1, right? Because it's the dark. And then like the yellow and green colors are definitely below zero point 0.4, right? So I don't know how you get over 1.4. If this appears to be close to saturated, and this is mostly, I think, down in like the 0.2 range, right? So those types of questions I would like clarity on. And again, to see how the metagenomes, the metatranscriptomes, how they relate to each other along the way, aside from converting these panels into a jitter plot, we will see how we can add some summary information, like say a line to indicate the median. And we will use patchwork, which is the tool I think they use to compose this figure together. And we'll use patchwork to compose our 3 panels together with a common y-axis. All right, as you join in today, thank you very much for saying hi. We've got Patrick from Kenya, Ibrahim from Algeria, John from the great city of Barrington, Illinois, just a couple states to the west of me, and then Mike from the UK. So thanks for joining. And again, if the science doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. I have to remind myself, and I'll remind you, that my goal here isn't to evaluate or understand the science. My goal is to represent the same data in, I think, a more compelling and informative manner, okay? So we need to go ahead and get the data for this. And if we come down to the bottom, we see that there's a link here for source data. And I think we saw this in a previous, in the critique video, but if I click on that, that brings me down to source data fig 1. So this was the metagenome gene abundance source data. And this will download an Excel work file. And so let's see if I can download it somewhere useful. Let's say save link as. And I'm going to put this into my hydrogenase refactor directory. And I will put this as source data fig 1. And save that. And so then if I look in my directory, which I thought I had open, but I didn't, let's bring that over here. And so that's now an Excel workbook. And if I open that up, let's make it a bit bigger so that you can see it. Great to have you, Mark, from England joining in. So across the bottom, they have 7 different tabs. So figure 1A for the biopsy, the stool metagenome, and the metatranscriptome. I'm going to move these tabs to be kind of in the order of the plot, right? So on the left, they had the metagenome. In the middle, they had the metatranscriptome. Let's go ahead and make that a bit bigger. And then they had the biopsy data, which I'm not going to be so concerned with. I don't think, unless we get further into this video. And then we also have the biopsy. Let's put that over to the right. All right. So figure 1B then, and I don't know that we're going to get to figure 1B. So I'm going to focus on figure 1A stool metagene CPM and figure 1A stool meta T RPKM. So the CPG is the unit on the metagenomic data. So the metagenomic is the DNA that's there, and CPG would be counts per genome. And what they did was they counted RPKM, and so RPKM is reads per kilobase per million. So it's a way to scale mainly transcript data. And so what they did was they applied that technique to the metagenome and then scaled them further by genes that are known to be in single copy within a bacterial genome. And so this is an estimate of the number of copies per genome. So in this sample, ACSB showed up in maybe 1 out of 100 genomes, right? Whereas like this iron gene, hydrogenase, showed up 1.34 times per genome, okay? And then the metatranscriptomes, we would expect the transcripts to be far more abundant if the gene is being expressed, right? And so one thing that I notice is that I think we have different sample numbers. So there are 78 metatranscriptomes and 300 metagenomes. And something that I will just briefly mention, because I spent my morning so far looking into this, that the original study they drew these data from was from a study looking at the metagenome and metatranscriptome of people with healthy colons, people with ulcerative colitis, and people with Crohn's disease. And they actually obtained multiple time points from many of these subjects. And so I tried, but ran out of time, to see if there'd be a way to kind of add that information, like disease information or something like that, to maybe have a bit more interesting plot. It's interesting that they didn't talk about that in this paper, because they later go on to talk about hydrogenase differences in healthy versus people with Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, cancer, and other gut diseases. But again, my goal is not to critique the paper, but to try to recreate the figure. So let's just see if the same sample IDs show up from the metatranscriptome in the metagenome, and it's not. So if we want to do a paired analysis, we need to figure out how to map between the metatranscriptome name and the metagenome name. And I've done some digging on this already, and if we go back up to the supplementary data, we can look and see if there's anything that might suggest a way to convert between metagenome and metatranscriptome, or some type of common analysis. And so the supplementary data 1, I'll go ahead and save this, save link as, and I'll go ahead and save this as supplementary data 1. And I had forgotten to do this, but I will go ahead and copy the link into the chat for this paper. Great to have you, Ani from Chile, and Dylan from the Netherlands. Awesome. So we've got the northern and southern hemisphere represented now, so that's awesome. And let's look at that supplementary data 1 file. And let me zoom. I guess when I zoom, it doesn't zoom everything. And so this is the biopsy sample metadata, stool metagenome, and I'm going to be looking for a tab down at the bottom that combines both the metagenome and the metatranscriptome, and maybe talks about ratios. So let's see. Stool meta T. All right. I had something. Nope, that's not it. That's the biopsy. Biopsy meta G, stool meta G. I'm not seeing it. So maybe that wasn't the place. Let me see. I know this doesn't make for very exciting viewing, but I know I have it in here somewhere. There we go. Transcribed abundance func genes RPKM. So these are the paired genes by metagenome and metatranscriptome. Okay, and so let me zoom this in a little bit. And so something that I notice is that they're using RPKM for the metagenome and for the metatranscriptome, which doesn't entirely make a lot of sense to me. Also, I'm noticing like the ratio here, this I believe is like the mean of this column. And so down at the bottom, I can say C3.2, right? And so that's the mean of that. And then this is the mean of the transcripts, which is 3.3. So the ratio of those means should be close to 1. And they got 4. And I wonder if their ratio, like there's no formulas in here. So I'm not totally sure how they got that. But anyway, again, we're going to demonstrate this. We can use this information to map between metagenome and metatranscriptome. Okay? So between that file and this file, we have the sample ID, we have the gene, we have the copies per genome, and then the RPKM for the metatranscriptomic data. And so we have the data for those 3 panels. Okay? and welcome from Lori from Toronto, and Mr. Juggerjag from Spain. Great. So I'm going to come over into our studio, and I have a script, hydrogenase refactor.r. As always, I know I'm going to use the tidyverse. I'll say library tidyverse, get that loaded. And just a reminder that this is the Riffomonas YouTube channel, and I put out a newsletter every week. And if you go to riffomonas.org, or even down below in the description for this episode, you'll find a link to go ahead and join that mailing list. And what you'll find that you'll get a weekly email from me where I talk about the visuals that I spend time talking about in a critique video that usually comes out on Monday, and this live streaming video here on Wednesday. So encourage you to subscribe to that. And yeah, the other thing to know is that at the end of this episode, I will post the code that I'm generating here, and you can get to that code again down below in the description. You'll find a link where you'll find that code. Okay, and we've got Phil from joining us from the UK as well. So we've got very good representation of the UK and the rest of Europe, South America and Chile, and Algeria, Northern Africa, which is awesome, and Patrick from Kenya, right? So awesome. No one from Asia at this point that I've seen. So if you're out there, holler. And of course, the United States, the great state of Illinois. Hopefully, John, you're a Cubs fan and not a White Sox fan. That's all I'll say. All right. So let's proceed by making 3 separate figures. So we'll start with converting that figure 1A, the left-hand plot, and where to go? There. Converting this into a strip plot or a jittered plot. And I think what we'll find is that what we do here will translate very nicely for the fecal metatranscriptomes and perhaps also the ratio. Okay. And as always, if you have questions as I'm going through this, or if you have ideas, or you want me to talk about something, by all means, use the chat. And I do my best to look over at that, and I kind of see it moving out of the corner of my eye. And also, I don't ask for this, but I think there is a way to make a small contribution to buy me coffee and peanut M&Ms. And so I would really appreciate any contributions you all are willing to make. I post these for free and out of the love of doing it, but it helps justify to my wife and others if there's a little bit coming in to help with my bad candy and caffeine habits. All right, so let's go ahead and read this in. So we'll do read. We want to do read Excel, right? So we're going to read directly from the Excel workbook. And so we'll do library read Excel. And so read Excel is installed with the tidyverse, and then read Excel allows you to read in a workbook. And I think what I'm going to do is, although I downloaded those files into my directory, I think what I'll do is I'll come back here and I'm going to go to the source data and grab that link. So this link, I will right click, copy link address, and then we'll put that in here. And that is a very long link. And it says it doesn't exist. So maybe read Excel doesn't let us read from a URL. So could we do like download file, and then we could plop in the URL, and then we can call that, what did I call this over here? Source data fig 1. All right. And then run that. So that downloaded that. Okay. So that's one way to do it, right? And then we can do read all this. And I've got too many quotes. All right. So then we read that in, and we get page 1, right? And so it's by default reading in the first page of the workbook. And so if I come back to Excel and the source data fig 1, I want this tab, okay? And I can then say page equals that. And I guess it's not page. Sheet equals that. My bad. All right. So now what you'll see is that we've got the sample, the gene, and the copies per genome, okay? I would like to advocate to share data in computational biology in other formats than Excel or CSV. Probably Parquet would be a good choice. Anything would be better than Excel. I agree. I'm just taking what I get, right? Okay, so that is the copies per genome for our metagenomic data, right? And yeah, so we can then go ahead and pipe this. And so I've got a couple questions. So, well, let's go ahead and plot it, okay? So we can do ggplot AES. On the x-axis, let's recreate what they did just quickly. Sample y equals gene, and then fill equals CPG, and then we'll do geome tile. Okay. And it's not going. Okay. I'm gonna stop that. So something weird happened. I'm gonna quit Excel, or quit this Excel page, because I think I downloaded it and that may be messing with Excel. We'll see. That's weird that it's having problems. All right, so let's just double check what we've got here. Read Excel. And it's not that big. It's got 84,000 files. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to quit RStudio. RStudio is typically pretty stable, so I'm not totally sure what's going on. But we'll reload it. No big deal. And then rerun these lines. And it's unhappy. All right, let me see what happens. So if I do meta g equals that, and then I look at meta g, we've got that. So the sample, the gene, and the CPG. X is the sample, Y is the gene. So I'm noticing that my CPG is in character rather than numeric. And I think that's because there's an E here, right? And so maybe what we could do is back here within read Excel, we could do, I think it's call types. And here then I can give a string to tell read Excel what type of data are in each column. So I could do, I think it's going to be CCN to read in character, numeric. And nope. SN? Nope. Maybe they changed the interface. Let's do read Excel. I don't read in a lot of Excel files, so kind of to that point that they mentioned, that the person mentioned, it's kind of weird. So let's see, call types, either null to guess from the spreadsheet or a character vector containing one entry per column from these options. Skip, guess, logical, numeric, date, text, or list. So I think this, so read CSV, you can give it a string like this, but I think what it wants me to do is to make a vector. And so then we'll do text, numeric. And I think I forgot closing parentheses here. All right, let's try this again. And it's warning that it's coercing text to numeric. So like this, we saw this previously up here, right, where we had this scientific notation, right? So if I look at meta G, I think I've had too much coffee already this morning. What was that one? That was CCON, 10 to the minus 4. Yeah, so it converted it correctly, even though it's warning. So I'm not going to worry about that. Now this should work. And I think the problem it was having a problem rendering was because it was trying to change the fill to be a string rather than as a numeric. And so what we find is a lot of dark color here, right? And I noticed that my CPG goes up to 6, whereas in the original, the CPG went up to 1. Okay. And so that's interesting, right? So let's go ahead and see what happens if we cap the CPG at 1 rather than 6. So I'm going to do a mutate CPG equals if else CPG greater than 1, then I want it to be 1. Otherwise, we'll do CPG and pipe that out. And now what we see is that we go from 0 to 1, and we have more of those light colors. Obviously, things are in a different order. So like this SDHA FRDA is right here. And so that's lighter in my version is more abundant and darker is rare. Let's see if we can make it look more like theirs. So we'll do scale, fill, and then it's viridis. And so there's 3 options for viridis. So there's B, which is binned, C, which is continuous, and D, which is discrete. So let's try that. And so again, that looks a lot like theirs, but it's reversed. And so I don't use the viridis package a whole lot, but there's a direction argument, which sets the order of colors in the scale. If 1, the default colors are ordered from darkest to lightest. If -1, it's reversed. So we'll do direction equals -1. And there we go. Now we have something that looks like theirs, albeit in a different order, right? So this like Fe hydrogenase is this line here. If you can see my cursor going across. This ATPA going across here is right there. And then that SDHA FRDA is right here, which again is right there. Okay. So it appears that they have a lot of stuff that I don't have, or actually there's a number of things over here that I see they're pulling together, like near K and near S, whereas I have near S and near K as separate entries. Okay. So let's see. And then also across the bottom, you can see the sample names, right? Which are just not very helpful. So I'll go ahead and comment that out. So it's in the code for you to use if you want to figure out how to make a heat map like this. Please don't make a heat map with 300 columns. So that's just bad. But I think one thing we did learn from this is that they were in the visual capping the copies per genome at 1. And so another critique I would level at them is that this shouldn't be 1. This should be greater than 1, right? To kind of indicate that they've put a ceiling on the upper end of where'd it go? They put a ceiling on the upper end of the CPG. Okay. And so again, you learn a lot about data, the data that people are presenting and how they made the figures by going through this process of trying to recreate things. Okay. And so we'll take meta G, and I'm going to do something very similar to what they did. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and grab this line. Okay. And instead of geom tile, I'm going to do geom jitter. And so what, well, let's do geom point just as a start, okay? And so on the x-axis, we had sample, and on the y-axis, we had gene. I like having the genes on the y-axis because some of the names, if we use their naming, are going to be quite long, right? And so if I put that on the x-axis, then we're going to tilt them, and then people are going to be forced to like look at an angle, and that's not good. I'm getting old, my back hurts, my neck hurts. I don't want to have to do that. But this is far easier to read. So on the x-axis, what I'd rather put is the abundance. And so let's put CPG here. And then fill, we're not going to have fill. And actually, I don't think I need anything because each point then in geom point will be a separate point. And so now what you see is that we've got the gene names on the y-axis and the abundance on the x-axis. But there's a lot of points here, right? There's 300 points, we think, for each gene. And so there's a lot of overplotting going on. And so instead of geom point, what we could do would be geom jitter. And what geom jitter does is it applies a small amount of variation to the width and the height. I think the width. Let's see. If we do width equals 0, I guess maybe it didn't do anything to the width. But if we did like height equals, say, 0.2, then that's going to change how much variation there is from kind of the point where we had, where'd it go? Geom point, right? So basically what geom jitter does is it adds a small amount between plus or minus 0.2 to the y position of all these points to separate them. And so that variation within the category on the y-axis doesn't mean anything. It's helping to separate the points. Something else we could do would be to then do size equals 1. And so that makes the points a little bit smaller. And we could do like 0.8 to make them smaller yet. Okay. And hopefully you can already see that this is an improvement over this, right? And so if we think about like our SDHA, FDHA, its average is, I'm eyeballing, right about 1, right? Whereas FE, I think is a bit above 1, okay? So maybe what we could do would be to do like color equals gray. And I'm going to go ahead and add theme classic to kind of get a clean background. Now, we can't totally see all of the points in here. It kind of looks like a big mass of stuff, right? And so if I took this down to say 0.5, that's a little bit better. You can kind of see the density of the points. And perhaps what we could also do in here would be like alpha equals 0.5, right? And so I don't know if that really helps. But one thing I'm noticing is this row has one point that seems to be moving back and forth as I run things, right? I never see other points for row. And so I'm wondering if they are including 0 values in the data, right? Because there should be 300 values for row, but there's only 1, it would appear, right? And so let's look at meta G, and we'll do filter gene equals row. And sure enough, there's only 1, right? Whereas if I did, let's pick FE, there are 300, okay? So it is removing the 0 values. And so I would like to include all the values because one thing I'd like to do is calculate the average, right? And so, if there are zeros in some of these, then that will bring down the average. But if the zero is not included in the data, then it's going to calculate the average without those zeros. Does that make sense? Okay. So how to get those zeros? I think what I will do is I'm going to take meta G, which, just to remind us, has the sample, the gene, and the CPG. And to get those zeros, so actually we can calculate something here. So there's 300, well, how many genes are there? So we can do meta G, count gene, and that gets us, maybe we could just do N distinct. Oh, it's not happy with that. Let's just go back to count. All right. So there's 44 genes, right? So if we had 44 times 300, that's 13,200. And what we're seeing is 8,466, right? So we're missing quite a bit of data, right? So 8,466 divided by 13,200. We're missing about a third of the data as zeros that aren't showing up in our plot on the right side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the data frame wide. Again, just to show you meta G, that I will put the genes in the columns, and then I can convert, it'll create NA values if there's something missing, and I can change those NAs to zeros, and then I can pivot longer to then get 13,200 rows. So let's see how we do that. So we'll do pivot wider, and we're going to pivot wider and do names from equals gene, values from equals CPG. This then gives us 300 rows. So we have 300 samples by 45 columns. And I think that's 44 genes plus the sample column. And what you'll see then is our NA values for where there was a 0. And pivot wider has a parameter called values fill. And if I put in a 0, let's remember CCON has a bunch of NA values. So if I run that, I now see that that turned those into zeros. But I don't want things to stay wide. I want them to go long. So we'll go ahead back to pivot longer, and we'll pivot longer everything but sample. So that minus sample means pivot everything but the sample, and we'll do names to now, and we'll call it gene, and we'll do values to, and I'm going to go ahead and change the name to abundance. And now what we get are sample gene abundance, and that's great. And now when we pivot this or pipe this in, we want to change X to abundance and run that. And see if we notice anything change. So first of all, the row, right, previously had 1 dot, and now it has many more dots, right? And we can kind of see that some of these got filled in, like NXRA down here, I notice, or MCB. Those are things that just really aren't super abundant, and if I had to guess, aren't actually included over here. That they are hydrogenases or things that are involved in hydrogen cycling, but they don't show up in the 300 metagenomes or the transcriptomes to any appreciable level, okay? Mike asks about my favorite, shape 21. So let's go ahead and try that. So let's try shape 21, and we'll do shape equals 21. Shape 21 will allow you to specify the border color as well as the interior color. So the border color is set by color, and the interior color is set by fill. And so then we could do color equals black. Okay, and let's see what this looks like. Looks like a lot, right? And you can change the stroke. I think 0.2 makes that border a little bit thinner. I'm going to go ahead and pipe this out to ggsave, or not pipe it, but write it out to ggsave, and I'll call it hydrogenase refactor.png. And we'll do width equals 6, height equals 4. So it's going to be wider than it is tall. And then let's go ahead and pop that open. And there we go. So my hope is that as we add other panels, we'll squish things together. And so I don't know what I think of that, Mike. At this resolution, we can probably make the jitter a little bit wider, right? So I had 0.2. What happens if we go 0.3? Right, so that helps a little bit, and they don't run into each other so much. Let's leave that for now, and we'll see how things look as we proceed, okay? The next thing that I want to do is add some indicator of the median, of like the central tendency. So I'm going to use the median because the data, some things appear to be normally distributed, like ATPA looks reasonable, but I think like this FE, it's got kind of a long tail. Certainly this, I think that's COX-L has a long tail, or COX-A has a longer tail. Anytime where you have a bunch of zeros, like this YGFK, and then things go out to the right, I think the mean is dangerous. And so I'm going to use the median. So to do that, I'm going to come in here, and we could do this a variety of ways, right? Like we could pull out the data, we could calculate the median, we could add geome segment. I've certainly done that before, but there's a great function called stat summary. And so stat summary is in ggplot2, And it allows us to summarize the data. And so I can do what? Well, let's just run it like this. And so it tells me no summary function supplied, defaulting to mean underscore SE. And so what we get is a big circle for the mean. And I suspect the SE is very small. Let me see if I zoom in on these, if I can see whiskers going out from those. Not so much. Yeah. All right. So that dot is being placed at the mean. So, and I don't like the dot entirely, but we could do fun equals median. So why is it unhappy there? I wonder why it's complaining about the median. But if we did like median underscore high-low, it says the package hmisc is required. Would you like to install it? Sure. So it's installing hmisc, which is a package that is a pretty old package in terms of R. And so let's see, default method not implemented for type list. So I wonder what that means. Let's do fun.data. And that behaved a bit better. And so now what we get is the median high-low. So the dot is the median, and the reach is the high-low, and I think it is the intraquartile range. So I think it is, or what is it? Let's do hmisc. Maybe it's capital hmisc. All right, let's do median high-low. Get rid of my face here. And so it's this S median high-low. And, the confidence interval is 0.95. Okay, so the whiskers is containing the 95% confidence interval, okay? So I'm gonna change this, and I think it didn't like me using fun, so I'm gonna use median. And it's complaining now because it's using geom point range. So I want to go ahead and change the geom. So we'll do geom equals crossbar. And that's complaining too. So let's do, I wonder why fun didn't work. Let's do fun. Okay, that works now. And so now what we get is a line segment, which is kind of hard to see, at the median, okay? And so I want to make that more narrow. And so the geom crossbar, if you're familiar with a box plot, so if I had done, let me comment this out real quick. Geom box plot. The geom box plot, the rectangle is the crossbar. So it's really like two rectangles joined together, or a rectangle with a thick line in the middle for the median. I'm glad I did this because I do not like the way this looks. So, all right. So I'm going to comment that out and bring this back. And so we can then make the crossbar more narrow. And so I'll do line width equals 0.2. And let's see, that is there, but it almost looks like it's behind it, but it's not. So let's go ahead and do width equals 0.5. And I think that made that narrower, so let's go up to 0.9. All right, let's go a little bit wider, so we'll do like 1.1. And that's wider still. Okay. So this isn't a whole lot to look at just now. But again, it's far, even as crude as this looks right now, I think it's far preferable to the heat map, right? Like, you know, these, it's just much easier to interpret the abundance, right? And I don't need to know, you know, this ATPA value here at my crosshairs. I don't need to know what its FE sample is, right? And even if I did, I'm not going to be able to come back here and be like, how do these different columns within the heat map relate to each other? Like just not going to be possible with this visual. If that's your question, then you need an entirely different type of visualization. So, all right. All right. So that's that. Okay. Let's then start to convert these gene names into the names that they have here. In part because things like NAPA and NARG are going to get pooled together, right? And NIRK and NIRS and other things are going to be left alone. And then I think there's also going to be things that we'll probably want to end up removing, okay? And so I'm going to, I would love to be able to highlight that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this image as, I'll say hydrogenous refactor original. Let's use PNG. And then let's open that up. And I'm going to see if I can, I can copy and paste this down. And then we are going to come back into R. And if I take my meta G, I want to mutate my gene, the gene column to something else, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and plop this here. And I'm going to use the recode function, okay? So recode allows us to recode the values in gene. And so let's make sure we've got the right number of parentheses here. All right, so I think that's right. And what we can then do, so this is NIFEL, which I think that L should be a closing bracket. So for whatever reason, it didn't perfectly copy it over, but hey, that's okay. So what we'll do is we'll come in here like this, correct that. Oh, no, it's got the closing bracket here. All right. And we can put that in quotes, and we can then say that that's going to be NIFE. And let me go ahead and comment this out. And I'm going to then pipe it in. And so now my NIFE, let's make sure that I've got NIFE, NIFE right here. This should turn into NIFE hydrogenase with the square braces, and everything else gets left the same. And it didn't happen. Oh, why didn't you happen? It could be that I've got the order switched. And I seem to recall that rename and recode do things in opposite order. So now that we've switched the order, now what we see is that we've got NIFE hydrogenase. Okay, very cool. And so now what I'm going to do is the tedious task of repeating this. And so I think I already did that NIFE hydrogenase. Okay, so then I'll come up here and do this. And maybe what I'll do, try to speed things along a little bit, is I will, let's see, let's go ahead and pull these things over. And then for each line, I'm going to put it in quotes because my keystrokes theoretically work faster this way. We'll see. All right. This somebody pointed out in the last video that sometimes these things seem very tedious. And they are. These are the tedious parts of data science. We'd like to automate everything, but everything has to get into a point where we can automate it, right? So we'll go ahead and add in the commas. All right. So one other thing that I noticed is that the gene names here, like MCRA, it's a gene name, so like the M is lowercase, whereas over here, MCRA, the first letter is capitalized, like a protein name. And so we'll have to be mindful of that, right? So let me go ahead then and cut and paste everything back over, or back up here, right? And now what I want to do is go ahead and do FE equals that. All right. Maybe I'll add my equal signs. Okay. Trying to go quickly because I know this is tedious to watch. It's tedious to do, but it's important to make the plot look somewhat sensible, right? All right. So now we want FE equals that. And then this is going to be MCRA. This is going to be SDHA. And I want to look, I knew one of them was hyphenate. So SDHA and FRDA is already together, right? So we'll then do FRDA equals that. And then ASRA equals that. DSRA. And so here we have a double, right? So we have NAP-A equals that. And I'm going to copy this line down, and we're going to have nar-G. So we'll do nar-G. And so basically what I'm doing is if I have NAP-A or nar-G, I'm going to turn that to an O reduction NAP-A nar-G, right? And then I can pool the abundances based on those genes. And so then here we'll do nar-K and nar-S. And I'm worried that I've lost some subscripts in here. If you asked, I am never going to fold on this. If you asked AI to do this, it might not have noticed that it lost the subscripts and superscripts like I just did. So I don't know. I think the more you work with the data, the more you the more you know your data, right? And I think that's always a good thing to know more about your data, which is, again, part of the reason why it's good to try to recreate visuals that other people have made. ATPA, and then CYDA. And if I had to guess, I may have unknowingly used AI when it converted that image to a PNG. I don't know. And it seems to, again, like screwed up some of those names. So we need a comma over here. And then this is going to be Coxa and CYA. That doesn't sound right. It's either CYD. Let's go back to the original. CYOA. Yeah, usually the translation on the image is pretty good, but this kind of botched it. And all right, so now we have changed the names. So again, wherever in the gene column it had NIFE, it's going to replace it with NIFE hydrogenase. And now when we look at this, we see not all of the genes had names, right? But a good number of them did. And I haven't pooled the data yet, right? So like this NO reduction NAP-A nar-G, probably has 600 points in it rather than 300. And so we need to come back up here and do a summarize. And we'll do summarize abundance equals sum of abundance. And we're going to do it by, and we'll do it by sample and gene. Okay. So again, just showing you what we've got. We've got like this aerobic respiration one, right? That this value is the pooling of these three values. And I've got CYA rather than CYOA. Okay. So it looks better. And then when we pipe this into everything else, we now have those gene names, right? And I want to hopefully quickly go through here and look to make sure that I've got everything, right? So NIFE hydrogenase is down here. Iron-iron hydrogenase is down here. Iron hydrogenase is down here. Methanogenesis, MCRA. So it's alphabetical, so I should be able to find right here, MCRA. Succinogenesis up here. Sulfitogenesis, ASRA, DSRA, those are there. NO3 minus, and so this is where I lost my subscripts and superscripts. Let's see. NO3 reduction, so NAPA, NARG, and then NO reduction to NO, that's there. NO reduction to ammonia, NO reduction, NOS-Z, NO reduction to N, that's NOR-B. Oh, so that, to N comma O, so that should be a 2. N fixation is there. Acetogenesis is down here. The 2 oxygen detoxification and the aerobic respiration right here, okay? So I think that's all good. Now we need to fix the labels, right? And so basically I lost my subscripts and superscripts. So I'm going to do that right quick. And while I'm at this would be a good opportunity to load ggtext. So we'll do library ggtext, because ggtext will allow me to insert HTML and Markdown into my text to get that represented, right? So like this MCRA, I can put in stars to make it italic, right? And I think actually what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the gene names in parentheses, right? And so we can do that. And okay, I'll come back. Let me get on these subscripts. So like the I've got 2 monitors here, so I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at the figure on a separate page. So that NO reduction with NAP-A should be NO3 minus. And then this should also be 3 minus. And then the NIR-K and NIR-S is NO2 minus. And NOR-B is NO reduction to N2O. And then N2O reduction with NOS-Z. Right? And then NO2 minus reduction to NH4 plus. And then N2 fixation to NIF-H. And I think that's all of the subscripts and superscripts. So I'm going to go through these quickly here and put parentheses and stars around my gene names. I don't know what the quickest way to do this is. Maybe I'll focus on the stars first and point and click. All right. Okay. Nor B. Sorry, I know this isn't super entertaining. Hopefully, if you're watching this after the live stream, you are fast forwarding through this, because while this is important, this is not necessarily a skill that is critical to learning R. But hey, it is, I think, a skill to making things look nice. Oftentimes people I see will have like bacterial names, and because they don't know how to make them italicized, they just leave them a regular font, right? Or sometimes some names need to be italicized and some don't, and they either make them all italics and all not italics. And I think it adds a level of professionalism, for the lack of a better phrase, to get this little stuff right? And you know, if I see somebody is getting the little stuff right, then it gives me trust that they're getting the more important stuff right. So I don't know. That's, yeah, when I start seeing little problems in things, it raises questions for me about bigger things. So who knows? It's always good to be vigilant. And I just want to double check that NO2 minus reduction to NO. Yep, that's NO. Okay. I was worried I missed a subscript there. Get that. Get that. All right. So thankfully, we won't have to do this, I don't think, with the other targets. We'll only have to do this once here. I mean, for like the metagenome, for the metatranscriptome, and for the ratio. All right. Almost to the bottom with the parentheses and italics. Bam. And last but not least, this one. All right, and so now what we want to do are the subscripts. So there is markdown for subscripts and superscripts. Let's see here. Yeah, so there is markdown for subscripts and superscripts, and it's not consistently used by the various engines that render markdown. So I'm going to go ahead and use the HTML. And so that would be sub, backed out with a sub, and then the superscript is soup, right? So maybe wherever we have the superscript, hyphen, we can plop that in quickly. A lot of programming is looking for opportunities to copy and paste and going for that. And so this NH4 plus for ammonia should be a plus. I think that's all the superscripts. And now let's do the subscripts. Right? So this is a 3. This is a 2. Oh, that's a 2. That's a 2. This is a 2. This is a 2. Maybe I should copy it with the 2. All right, and then we've got oxygen with the 2. And then this NH4, that should be a 4. And I think that's everything, okay? So of course, if I make the plot like this, it's gonna be pretty gnarly because we haven't told ggplot what to render as markdown. So that gets us into the theme function. So we'll do theme axis.text.y element markdown. And voila, we now have our italics for the gene names, and we have the subscripts and the superscripts for the 2 and the minus, or the 3 and the minus, right? And of course, we've got other genes in here that which we don't need. It is interesting that some of these things seem to be abundant. right? Like RC, which I think is an arsenate reductase, FDHA, which I think is a fumarate dehydrogenase. NuOF is something else. And SQR, which is something else, and then YGF is something else, right? Like it's interesting that those had a decent number of copies per genome, but they're not included in the final plot. Just because this is already, I'm a little bit behind schedule, I think. I'm going to go ahead and remove those. And so I am going to focus on things I have. And I noticed there's an MCR. There was also an MCRA. So I think I'll go ahead and add that MCR. That's like it's involved in methanogenesis. So, and again, that was capital MCR. All right. And if you wanted to, you could go through these and kind of pick some of these things off that are pretty abundant. Again, there's things like these HBST, HBSC that just, they may have popped up like in one sample, but by and large, they're down at 0, right? So, yeah. So anyway, let's go ahead and now filter this to remove these other samples. So how do we do this? Well, the names that I recoded either have a parenthesis or a square bracket. So I'm going to keep the things that have a parenthesis or a square bracket for gene, right? So maybe what we could then do would, let's do up here, we'll do filter, and I'll do str detect in gene. That's going to be the string I'm going to look in, and then the pattern. We can create our own pattern by using square brackets, and so anything in the square brackets we are going to keep. So if I put in like a lowercase a, actually I don't know what that'll do. That should give me only gene names that have or these genes that have an A in them, right? Which is not what I want. But what I want would be an open parentheses or a square brace. But because the parenthesis and a square brace means something when making a pattern, I need to put 2 backslashes before them to say, I want you to actually match an open parentheses and an open bracket. I don't want you to use its role in forming a pattern, also called a regular expression. So when I run that now, what I see is that I've got only those things that have a parenthesis or the square bracket. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Just making sure I got everything I thought I should have. 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Awesome. We got everything. All right. So now let's think about the order. And so they have stuff ordered on the y-axis by function, right? So they've got these hydrogenases, which are really the point of the paper at the top. And then they've got, methanogenesis, succinogenesis, and then 2 for sulfitogenesis, a whole bunch of things related to nitrogen, acetogenesis, oxygen, aerobic respiration, okay? I want to keep these hydrogenases separate, but I would prefer to order everything by the median abundance, okay? And so I think if we want to ever order something, we want to use a factor. But before I get there, I'm going to go ahead in here and do a mutate. And I'll say hydrogenase, or I'll say type equals if else, and if I detect in gene a square brace, right? Then I'm going to say hydrogenase. Otherwise, I'm going to say other. Okay. And so what that gives me then is a new column of type, right? And so we can see like down here, we have this as a hydrogenase. What I can do with that then is by piping that into ggplot, I can then facet the plot based on the type. So I'll do facet wrap tilde type, and I'll do endCall equals 1. And so I should get one column at the top. I'll have the hydrogenases at the bottom. I'll have everything else like so. And again, I know this looks bad. We're going to work on it, right? Hey, Julian, thanks for joining. The hydrogenases, we obviously have the hydrogenases. We have all this other stuff too, right? Whereas in the other, we have all the other things, but we don't have the hydrogenases. So in facet wrap, we can then do scales equals free underscore y. And what that'll do is that will remove the y values that aren't used in a facet. And so now what we get are the 3 hydrogenases on their own and everything else on their own. But the hydrogenase panel is the same height as the other panel. I want each y value to have the same height. I don't want the panels to have the same height. And so again, this is a argument in facet wrap that is new to the latest version of ggplot2. And so that then is space, and we'll again do free underscore y, and that is going to remove the extra space along the y-axis values. And so now what we see is that we have hydrogenase and other. So my critique about their plot having these 3 panels be the same width, if they had made this with facet wrap, they could have gotten the panels to be proportional using that space equals x, right? Because then each column within the heat map going across would have had the same width rather than the panels having the same width, okay? So that's a very nice new feature. All right, so let's go ahead and then get rid of these strips. And so I'll do strip.text equals element blank, and also do strip.background equals element blank. And so what that then does is that sets apart the hydrogenases and then puts everything else on its own at the bottom. So we've got the hydrogenases on their own. Now let's order everything by abundance. We could do it by kind of category like they did, but I would rather see it by abundance, okay? This might be something that, again, is in the eye of the beholder. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to pull this apart and call this D for data. Or, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and grab this and make that meta G, okay? And I'll link reading in the data with processing the data. So it's giving me that warning still. And so let's make sure the plot looks the same. It looks the same. All right. And also what I've noticed is that by consolidating some of the genes together and removing other genes that had 0 abundances, we now get more separation of our points, which is nice to see. I think those bars might actually be too wide. I noticed like right here, they're overlapping on each other. So maybe I'll go ahead and reduce that, right? So that was in stat summary line width 1.1. What happens if we make it 1? So that makes them run into each other. So let's go to 0.9. And that then keeps them separated, and that looks pretty good. All right. Now let's do the order. Okay, so we can then pull this apart and do meta G. Make sure we've got that loaded, that loaded, that loaded. Make sure nothing's changed. Things do change because I haven't set the seed. And so we could do like set.seed 1976 06 20, a random string of numbers that happens to be my birthday. All right. It's funny how every year people catch on to this and leave me comments, which I appreciate, wishing me a happy birthday on my birthday, because I tell everybody it's my birthday. And so what that does then is if I rerun this, nothing changes, right? but I have to rerun the set seed every time I do this. If there might be a way to do that within geom jitter. Actually, let's see. Is there a way? I think there is. Oh. Maybe within position jitter. With height seed. So I could do position jitter, or position equals position jitter. And then I could put all this stuff in there. And I could then do seed equals 1976, 06, 20. And let's put this down a line. Get that. We need a comma at the end here. Okay, now when I run this again, it shouldn't change. Good, it's locked in. All right. I know that annoys people when points move from run to run. So, and it's good for reproducibility. Okay, so like I was saying, abundance. So we have meta G, and I want to order it by abundance, right? By the median abundance. So we need to go ahead and get the median abundance. So we'll then do summarize, and I'll do median, and we'll do median abundance. And I'll go ahead and call this median underscore abundance in case it worries you that we have a function in the same name as a variable. And we'll then do this by, and we'll do it by gene. Okay. And so this gives us our 17 genes and the median abundance. I can do arrange on median abundance to get things into order by median abundance, right? And then what I can do is a pull on gene to get the list of the genes in the order, right? So I'll then call this gene order. And then what I can do within meta G is a mutate on gene to make it a factor of gene. And I'll set my levels to be gene order, okay? So I will either have things in the correct order or the reverse order of what I want. So let's see what this does. Oh, and I'm missing something. I'm missing a, oh, I put a plus instead of a pipe. All right. And what do you know? I got it right, yeah? So we then see things are going down by abundance. I like this better. I don't know. Yeah, I like this better. I'm just gonna say it. I like this better. And it's, I think, easier to say, well, this Fe hydrogenase is about, you know, it's midway between the similarity or frequency or commonality of this ATPA and SDHA FRDA, right? Cool. I like that look. All right. So then let's add a little bit of stuff. So we'll do labs, and I'm going to do X equals abundance. And I'll then say, what? I'm going to say CPM or CPG. And then Y is going to be null. Right? And I'm thinking ahead too far, but I'm thinking ahead to this, right? Where they have these titles. Sorry. And I think what I'll do is instead of facet wrap, I think what I'll do is facet grid. And I'll do, well, I need to say the data type, right? So let's come in here and we'll do data set, and I'll say metagenome. And yep, we get that, that's fine. And then down here, again, that's data set. We'll do data set tilde type. I don't need this end call equals 1. And okay. So I need to reverse the values. So on the left are the hydrogenases, and on the right are the others. So I can do type tilde data set. And now we've got it like we want, but I turned off the strips, right? So let me go ahead and comment that out. We get those back, right? And so at the top, we have that metagenome. I like that. I want that. I don't want these. And so maybe what I'll do is strip text y equals element blank. And that got rid of those strips. And then we can also get rid of the background. Cool. Okay. So that's the first panel. Okay. Cool. Now, so I'm going to go ahead and save this as meta G panel. All right. Now we want to do the meta transcriptome. Okay. So, we've already downloaded the file, and we're largely going to copy this, right? And I apologize in advance if this does not come off very dry. Dry being don't repeat yourself, right? And so, yeah, it's not going to be dry, but it'll be okay. If we had more time, or if I was doing this for my own publication, I would definitely make it dry. So I'm going to change this to be meta T, and then I'm going to come back to my Excel workbook. And this is the supplementary data. All right, I think I closed that. So we want source data fig 1, and we want this tab. The probably can't see it very well. It's not making it bigger. Oh, because I've got it highlighted. And it's not making the tab any bigger, the tab name. But this is the one I want, the stool meta T RPKM. And I will then put that in here like so. And so then this is going to read that in. And let's check out the columns. So it's sample, gene, and total RPKM. So it's the same string number, right? And so it's coming in as a double, no warnings, that's great. We again want to pivot it wider. So we'll take values from total RPKM and then go to abundance. And this might just work. So meta T, and then so that's the meta G panel. Maybe I'll put this back up here, and then down here we'll eventually call it meta T panel, right? But for now, we'll just save that and put a pin on that. So let's see what happens if we run this. No errors, no warnings. And voila, we have our meta transcriptome, right? So I need to change that. I think I called it metagenome, and it should be, this is the meta T, right? And so this should be meta transcriptome. Oh, and all right. So we've got meta transcriptome, and we've got abundance. Something that they did that I kind of criticized them for was that they put things in a log scale, but they then, so they had it in a log scale, right? And they have this RPKM plus 1 going from 0 to 3 something, right? And so instead of like 1, 2, or 3, I'd prefer they'd have put like 10, 100, 1,000, which is, again, what we have, oh, where'd you go? On the x-axis, right? So let's go ahead and put this on a log scale. And we can do that up here. We'll do scale x log 10. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a warning message or error message because I've got 0 values. And so you see that we've got infinite values. But what you'll see is that we've got 0.1, 1, 10, 100, 1,000. Okay. And I'm not sure if I like that or not. I can see a bunch of points right up here, which is probably not where they're supposed to be. I don't know. What do you think? Should we do log 10 or not? I have a way that we can fix that. Let me know. The first person that tells me log 10 or not, I'll do what you say. I'll take a drink, and whoever chimes in, I'll follow that suggestion. No strong feelings? Okay. I will go ahead and I'll make a decision. I think we should log it. Let's see. Yeah, let's do log 10. Let's do log 10. That's fine. So to log 10 it, we are going to add a arbitrary value, right? And so you can kind of see there's, if you look really close, you see these bumps? Those are the NA values. And so again, this is 1, this is 0.1. I'm going to put those at, I'm going to put the zeros at 0.01. And let's see. So if we do abundance equals if else abundance equals 0, then let's do 10 to the minus 3. Otherwise, we'll do abundance. So it's still upset. Why are you upset? Oh, because I misspelled abundance. Did I? Yeah. Right there. All right. So these are basically my 0 values, right? So maybe instead of 10 to the minus 3, we'll do 10 to the minus 2, right? Maybe I will do split the difference and do that. Okay. And so then I'm going to put up a line there. So let's see. We can do that with geom vline, and I'll do x-intercept equals 0.001. I think I put in too many zeros. There we go. All right. And I'll make that v-line gray. And then line width, say 0.3, so it's thin, right? Would 0 actually be less than the detection limit? Yes, yes. And that's what I'm doing, right? Yeah. So I'll put 0 here as like being below the detection limit. And so let's go ahead then, and in this scale x log 10, we'll have breaks. And so I put that at 0.005. And then we have 0.1. Let's do 1, 10, 100, 1,000. Like that. And then we can put labels on that. And I'll do 0. And then I'll do 0.11, 10, 100, and then 1,000. Like that. I don't know what you think of that. I feel like that line could probably move over to the right a little bit. GMV line, let's do 0.03. Oh, that's too far. 0.02. Not too far still. 0.15. All right, I'm going to go back to 0.01. All right. Cool. So yeah. All right, that's cool. So then the abundance, the labs, should be RP KM, like so. All right, cool. Now let's go ahead and try to do the ratio. Okay. So we got to save this back to meta T panel. And actually, let's go ahead and see what this looks like with patchwork. And we can do meta G panel plus meta T panel. And that looks horrible because we've got the same y-axis text, right? And so let's see, there's a way to do this. So we'll do patchwork R, been here before. And let's see, articles, controlling layouts. Yeah, controlling axes. So what they did was something kind of like this, right? Where they have the legends off to the right for all of the panels, right? If we look, I don't have it right here, but so then we can do the same type of thing because a legend for color or shape is a guide and an axis is also a guide, right? And so we can then add in plus plot layout axes equals collect. And so this should get rid of the duplicate y-axis. And I removed the P. There we go. Right? So we have the metagenome, we have the metatranscriptome, and we'd like to add a third thing. But our text is going to be way too big. So let's go ahead and in these we have axis text Y. Let's do like size equals 8. And I think the thing here is that they have to be the same. So it shrinks that down. Maybe we can go down to 6. I don't want to be too small because another critique I had of theirs was that the text was so small, you couldn't actually read it. Okay. And the x-axis text could probably go down to say 8. We'll do element text, size equals 8. And then I'll plop that in there. All right. Cool. All right. So now let's add the ratio. So hopefully, again, you can see that this is already, I think, superior to the heat map. Like with the heat map, again, one of the big challenges with the heat map is that we have this log scale, and black is 3. What does that mean? Oh, that's 10 to the 3. That is if you remember your logarithmic rules, right? Whereas like I can just see it, right? And interpreting interpreting a log scale is challenging. I won't deny that, but I don't know. I think that's easier to see. It might be nice to have the axis line here. I don't know that we'll get there, but that would be something that I would look into, like, how do we add that? But all right. Let's go ahead and see about the ratio now. Hopefully we can do this quickly. And so, as I mentioned, let's see, where do we go? So the sample names, these are like SRA accession numbers from NCBI for the transcriptomic data, and this is for the metagenomic data. And so there's only 78, there are 78 metatranscriptomic files, and there's 300 metagenomic files. And so to calculate the ratio, I want to do it on a paired basis, where for each sample, I know the actual ratio. So we can again do a jitter plot for the ratio. But I don't know like what patient this belongs to unless I look at this, right? So we've got this lookup. And so let's see how to take this on. And again, we'll go ahead and do another download file. And let's see, where'd you go? This was down in supplementary information, supplementary data 1. It's an Excel workbook. So we'll do copy link address. And then we'll plop that into here. Right, and then this was, I already downloaded it, what do I call it? Supplementary data 1. Oh, yeah, all right. All right, so we've got that. I'm gonna go ahead and close this file as soon as I can re-find it. And then what we'll do is, all right. Again, this is not very dry or very well organized. I'm probably trying to do way too much in too short of a time. So let's go ahead and then get this loaded. So we'll do read Excel on that. I forget what page I want. So let's go ahead and reopen it and find the page we want. And I'm just going to kind of click through all these because I should have written that down, but I didn't. So here we are. There we go. So this is this page, and the sheet equals that. And I noticed that it copied over a space at the end of the name. And that's no doubt because this has, as you can see, a space at the end of it. Okay. So that reads that in nicely. Oh, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it reads it in, but not nicely. And so you'll notice that in their workbook, they've got a fair amount of formatting. So formatting workbooks is always precarious for people like me who try to come along later and work with it. So what we want to do is we really want to go from like A2 down to B81. So I can come in here then. Let's put this on another line. And then we can do range equals, and I'll do A2 colon B, what did I say, 81. And so that then reads that in and gives me meta G and meta T it's got that NA row, but there's 79 rows. So if I go ahead and do drop NA, I now have 78 rows. I'm going to go ahead and rename all to lower to get lowercase names. Okay. So I'll call this meta GT map. All right. So let's see. Can we just take meta G and meta T and join them together? So we'll do meta T. All right. I think that could work. Let's try it. So again, meta G T map in the first column has meta G. So I'm going to do an inner join with meta G and meta GT map, but we have different column names, right? So we'll do by equals, and then on the left, so the meta G, that sample equals meta G, right? So I'm going to join meta G on meta GT map using the sample column from meta G and the meta G column from meta GT map. So this column, right? No errors. That's always good to see. And we see that we're down to 1,326 rows by 6 columns. So we've got the sample, the gene, the abundance, the type, the data set, and then we've got meta T. And so now what we want to do is we want to do another inner join on the stuff coming through the pipe with meta T. And we're going to join it by meta T. That's what's on the left, equals sample. But we also want to join on the gene, right? So we're going to join on 2 columns, the sample column and the gene column, okay? And that worked. We have 1,326 rows, which is what we had before. And so if I pop this up, we can see we have the sample, the gene, the abundance X, which is the metagenomic abundance. The data set X tells us that it's the metagenomic. And then we have the metatranscriptomic information going off to the right. Okay. So we got that joined. Wonderful. Now we want to do a mutate to get the ratio, and that is going to be what? Abundance Y divided by abundance X. Okay. And, well, put that off here to ratio on its own outside of everything else. So let's go ahead and pare this down. We'll do select. We can do sample gene. We'll do type dot X. We'll do type equals type X. Right? Oh, we need the ratio. Duh. And yeah, ratio. Okay. So something that occurs to me though is that let's put in abundance dot Y and ratio. Okay. Is that, so we put Y over X. And so if Y is 0, then the ratio is 0. That makes sense. But we could also imagine a case where abundance might be X. Let's do filter abundance dot X equals 0. And what we get then are NA values. And at least on these first 10 values, abundance X and abundance Y were 0. Okay. And I would say that the ratio should be 0. Okay. That is something where we might disagree. We might need to have a discussion in a lab meeting, but I'm going to go ahead and say if abundance X and abundance Y are 0, then the ratio should be 0. So let's see what happens if I do filter on that and not times, and abundance Y not equal to 0. Does that exist? Yes. So we have cases where it wasn't seen in the metagenome, but it is seen in the metatranscriptome. Okay. So we've got not seen in either. I think that should be 0. Not seen in the metagenome, but seen in the metatranscriptome. So maybe what we'll do is say, let's do a case when. When in doubt, case when. I said no one ever. Okay. Case when. Case when. What did I say? Abundance X equals 0 and abundance Y equals 0 tilde 0. Okay. And I need to get rid of that extra period. I got that spelled right. So now in the case when abundance X equals 0 and this situation, abundance Y not equal to 0, I'm going to make that a big number for now, like 1e to the 5. And then otherwise, I want to get the ratio. And I think I need a closing parenthesis on my mutate. Got that. And so, yeah. Okay. So, cool. All right. Now let's think about plotting this. And I'm going to grab this code, to plot my thing. And let's see, I have that here. So the first step then is to reorder everything in the gene order from the metagenomic data. I then have this abundance line here, which I don't want, right? And instead of abundance, I want ratio on my y-axis. And I also have this scale x log 10. I'm going to go ahead and comment that out for now. And I'll call that ratio of RPKM to CPG. Let's see what this looks like. Oops, I think I don't know what I just did. Let's try that again. Pat. Oh, I see what I did. I put it, let me just redo everything. I put that at the bottom of my MetaGT map, which wasn't where I wanted it. I want that at the bottom of my inner join. Okay. There we go. I'm sure somebody was saying, Pat, what are you doing? I couldn't hear you. I don't know why. All right. And let's see. Oh, we're missing a data set. So we need to add data set. And yeah, let's go ahead in here. Go to data set. Oh, I need that outside of this. Data set equals ratio. Oh. Data set and then GG save. Oh. There we go. So now what we have is the ratio. So this was where I put in like the big number, but I've got an even bigger number out here, right? And I think that is because I pooled big numbers instead of getting the average of those big numbers. So let's see, where did I do that? Let's see, so we've got the ratio, the select, the mutate. I actually didn't synthesize it down, okay? So let's go ahead and do a summarize, and we'll do summarize what? I think I want to do it on the abundance. right? So we'll do let's see, where did I do meta G panel? Or meta G. I thought I did the meta G summarize. Yeah, I did that here. So something weird is happening there. It's not adding it together. For right now, let's see what it looked like again. So we have this value out here that is further out than it should be. And, well, that might just be the nature of the data, right? So if I look back here, I could do arrange minus ratio. So descending order of the ratio. And so there's something in here at 1.84 e to the minus 5, which is 91 divided by that, right? So that's something that's out beyond the limit. And so what I'm inclined to do is bring everything over, or maybe bring that further out to the right. Yeah, what should we do? Maybe I'll make that 200,000 instead of 100,000. Okay, and so now let's turn that off. Yep. Okay, so now we have our limit out here. We also have 0, right? Where we put in 0 and 0 is 0. So I wonder if we do like 1 divided by 2 to the negative 5. Well, we're not going to see it because it's really small, right? But we could again do scale x log 10, where, yeah, let's do that. Oh, it's unhappy with me because I must have 0 values in there. So that would be 1. So it appears that everything in their metatranscriptome was in their metagenome, except for the stuff that I called really small, right? And that seems weird to me. All right. I'm not sure what to do with that. That would take more thought than I have in the time I want to spend finishing this today. So it kind of underscores, I think, also that like making data visualizations is really hard, right? And I don't, even though, you know, anybody can throw stones, but making these visuals is hard, and kind of the things you have to think through. Hopefully I'm illustrating that for you all pretty effectively. Let me turn off that V line here. Get that. And I think, so like the problem though is like we can't see anything, right? So let's go ahead and put that back on a log 10 scale. But we're getting things with infinite values. So there must be zeros in here, right? So let's see. So maybe we need an abundance Y. Maybe it's like, yeah, maybe we don't need abundance x equals 0 and abundance y equals 0. We need anytime abundance y is 0, we want to make this 1 divided 2e to the 5. And we get something like that. And so that's going to be probably too low, right? But let's go ahead and make it, so this is the ratio, right? Let's go ahead and make it 0.01. So something like that. And what I'd like to do is bring it in more. So maybe instead of 0.01, we do 0.1. Something like that. And maybe this we could pull out to the right more. Let's make this 0.5, and then let's make this 5e to the 5. I think that's good. Or maybe we could go further out. All right. So now what I'm going to do is very similar to what I did here. So the V line, I have intercept at 0.01. Maybe I will make my intercept at 1. 1 and something else. So let's put that at 5e to the 5. See what it looks like. That's pretty good. And we can bring that line over a little bit, say like 3e to the 5. That's cool. And then for our labels on this, so we have, I keep forgetting my values that I put in here. So 0.5 and 7e to the 5. 0.5 and 7e to the 5. And then what do we want in between? We have 10, 100. Okay. So we'll do 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 1e to the 5. And then our labels, I'm going to put at 0. And then we'll do 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100, 1,000. I know there's a function, a package to do this, but with the scales function, you can make them look pretty without having to manually put in the commas, but I'm doing something a little bit different than that. So let's try this. Okay, and let's go down to 1. All right. Maybe let's not do 1. Okay. So I'm going to then say that's 0, and then I'm going to say this is, instead of inf, it was not in metagenome. Maybe I'll just shorten it. Something like that. Okay. And so now let's go ahead and save this as ratio panel. And then we'll do ratio panel. Bam, bam. Grand reveal, please work. Oofda. Well, so I think the text here is too big on the x-axis. So that was axis text x6. Let's go down to 6. And maybe we'll make the y 5. So I have to update that in all of these, I believe. So do 6 and 5. And then one more up here. 6 and 5. Rerun everything. Like that. And now I start thinking about the width. I see it's 6, and I'm pretty sure I could probably go out to like 7.5, but let's try 7. Let's go to 7.5. Because if the page width is 8.5, then we get some space around it. We get something like that. That not in meta G is, and the text is kind of running into stuff. I would probably play with this more. I would make it geom violin below the dots. Yeah, you could do that. I really do not like violin plots. I think they're pretty ugly. Like, they rarely look good. Is kind of my personal feeling. I don't know. I will play with this some more before I finally post the code. But like, I would make the axis lines more thin. And I think I can do that with like an ampersand. Can I do like theme axis dot line equals element line line width equals 0.5? Does that work? Yeah. Well, no, that didn't work. I do plus? No. It's not an ampersand? All right, well, I'm inclined to call it there. Let's see what this looks like. And again, this is what I came up with. It is not perfect by any means. So that's where I ended. And let's see where we started. We started here, right? And again, I'm kind of going at different questions than what they had in their first two panels. But the problem I was trying to overcome is the abundance issue, right? Is that the colors are impossible to differentiate, especially since they capped the CPG at 1 when it really goes up to like just over 6, right? And then also working in the ratio here, right? To show what things are kind of punching above their weight in terms of what's getting expressed, right? If kind of being honest about mine and what I like and don't like and things that I will probably spend the rest of the morning working on without bothering you all with your time, would be to get some more space laterally so that this text doesn't run into each other, right? And maybe what I would do would be to remove this oxygen detoxification and leave it at aerobic respiration, because there's another aerobic respiration down in here, right? I feel like the axis lines are really heavy. The ticks are very heavy. I feel like the points are probably a little too small. Excuse me, a little too small. And I, as much as I love symbol 21, the border brings in a lot of black, and I feel like that it makes everything look dark. I think another thing I would do now that I'm looking at this would be to embed in the names the N, right? And so maybe I'll do that real quick, because that was another one of my critiques, is that it wasn't obvious from the plot what the N was, and it kind of made the plots look very similar, right? So I'll say metagenome, and then maybe I'll do \n equals 100, and maybe I'll put space around it, and then meta transcriptome. I'll then do n equals 78, and I already forget if I put a line break in there. Yes, I did. I have the brain of a goldfish some days. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing down here for the ratio. And I'll do n equals 78. I don't think we need a line break under that. And then I also noticed like the abundance. I've got abundance mentioned for all three panels, but I don't think that's necessary. And so maybe I will leave it with the unit of CPG and then RPKM. And then I think, where's my labs for the ratio? Yeah, I'll make that RPKM divided by CPG. All right, and then I will run this all. Voila. And maybe I'll put a line break under the ratio just because it looks weird for that to be the only one on one line. There we go. So, I don't know. There's all sorts of little things I would probably tweak with, but I would try to find a way to get more horizontal space, and I would lighten the thickness on the axis lines and ticks. I would probably try to figure out how to get a vertical line on the left side of the two plots. So if you check out the code that I will post, you will probably see those changes, okay? But we're just after 2 hours, and I feel like I've gotten you all to watch so far. A great question: do journals require colorful plots when a black and white will do? I do not think that you should make something colorful that's not colorful. So as an example, panel C has color, right? Orange, blue, and this like pink color. It means nothing, right? It's not referred to in the caption or anything. And it leaves me confused. Like, what does the color mean? I don't know, right? Perhaps what we could do would be to like make those vertical lines in stat summary. Like we could do like color equals like Dodger blue. It didn't get in. I'm wondering why it didn't get in. Maybe it's fill instead of color. I don't know. I'm doing something wrong, but I'm trying to rush through. But I would say only add color if you need color, because color is something that if it's different across panels, people are going to be like, why is it different across panels? And if you don't explain it, then that's not going to be very helpful. So thank you for that question. That's great. And I think that plots should be informative more than entertaining. Okay. And so, yeah, so on the whole, this does seem dark. And so I would probably try to remove the border around that 0.21. Maybe make the points a little bit bigger if I can. Maybe make the axis titles here a little bit smaller. And then, like I said, try to get this like not in metagenome to, I don't know, separate from the 100,000. I'd be reluctant to go into like scientific notation like 10 to the 5 here, but maybe that's necessary. I don't know. I don't think so. But let me know what you think. All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching. And I've really enjoyed building this out with you all. I do think this is vastly improved. If for some reason the authors of the original paper ever find this video, I hope you think I've done you justice and I have been constructive. Like I've said other times, like this is a huge data set, and I think there's so much more you could have done when you actually did a ton already. Making plots is hard. Making effective plots is really hard. And so hopefully I've demonstrated that to you all as well. All right, well, keep practicing with this. I hope you can find a way to incorporate what I've talked about today into your own work, seeing how patchwork works, seeing how we can make facets, how we can order things, how we can summarize things, right? A lot of cool techniques went into making this plot. Please tell your friends what we're doing here, and I will see you next time.